Well, Sex and the City fans are about to find out more about their favorite New Yorkers, like who was Carrie Bradshaw before she became the Carrie Bradshaw. And those friends of hers, where did they come from? How did they all meet? Where did it all start? Well, we find the answers in Candice Bushnell's new book, Summer in the City, and she joins us now to talk more about this. Candice, great to see you again.
Great to see you, Chris.
You are to Sex and the City what George Lucas is to Star Wars. This is, I mean, there are so many of these now.
Well, somebody made that comment.
But this is now, this is where the comparison is made, because this is a prequel to last year's sequel. Or sequel to last year's prequel.
It is. It's the sequel to the prequel. But it was basically, the prequel is a two-part series. It's two books.
Yeah.
The Carrie Diaries was Carrie's first last year in high school, and Summer in the City picks up where the Carrie Diaries left off as she's arrived in New York. So it's her first summer in New York City. She meets Samantha and Miranda, and Charlotte comes in, but I'm not going to say when or how.
It's
That's
hard.
Be a
it's hard for me to
surprise.
believe that it's been so long since Sex and the City debuted on HBO, 1998.
Well, the crazy thing about it is I started writing it in 1994.
So this has been following you around for years.
But you know, I love it. I have to say, writing Summer in the City, I had such a great time revisiting those characters in this new iteration and incarnation because they're young. Carrie is 17, turning 18. Miranda's about 18, and Samantha, who was always 8 years older, of course, is 25 years old. And they're all thrown together.
Yeah.
And Samantha is the one who, she's kind of telling Carrie about the city and the way it is and the way men are. And meanwhile, Miranda is a hardcore feminist. Carrie meets her in front of Saks Fifth Avenue, and Miranda is protesting against pornography, which was a real thing in the early 80s. It was a time when there was so much feminism in the air and a lot of anger because you know, equality between the sexes, it was not the way it was today.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of sexual harassment, which is hinted at in Samantha's story. So Carrie ends up getting sort of the two sides of, you know, this budding freedom of sexuality, and at the same time, this sort of feminist anger that, you know, things with men aren't the way they should be.
Yeah, and that kind of shapes her, obviously.
And it really shapes her to become the Carrie who we meet, you know, in the book Sex and the City and the series Sex and the City. You
talked earlier, you know, when we first mentioned about how you started this way back in the early 90s, how much you loved writing these characters and writing these books. The fact that it's been so well received, I know, only adds to it. But what's the big lesson for people that are familiar with Carrie Bradshaw, for now some of the new generation of people that are now going to become more familiar with her? What's the big takeaway?
I think for young women, it really is about finding yourself and being an individual. And in fact, all three of the characters, Carrie and Miranda and Samantha, although they're different sides of their personalities, you see, they're all on that journey to define who they are outside of society's expectations for women.
Interesting that you kind of defined a generation, too. I mean,
Thank you.
I mean, it has. It's something that kind of took on a life of its own, and now there's just so many things that are synonymous with Carrie, with Sex and the City, with New York City. There's just so many identifiable things with the show that all kind of comes back to your idea way back when.
Exactly.
Congratulations.
It's great. Thank you, Chris.
Congratulations. It's incredible.